Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Reads. Today I want to talk about Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, written by Douglas Adams, an image of which you will see here. Um, Douglas Adams is better known for writing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, there was a BBC television series called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the book. Aside from the character of Dirk Gently existing, I admit I have not watched the BBC TV series, but from what I know of it, it's not related to this actual story. There may be elements, but from a cursory examination, there's nothing to do with this actual story. What to say about this book? It involves the characters of Richard, a programmer for a well-to-do British software company, his boss, Gordon Way, who owns the company, his boss's sister, Susan Way, who is a cellist, professional cellist, who Richard is dating, Richard's old college mentor, a man who everyone calls Reg, and of course, Dirk Gently, which is not his real name, but who is an old college acquaintance of Richard. His real name is Savelli. I can't pronounce it. It's like some Slavic name. The character Dirk Gently continuously has, throughout his life, has changed that name several times to currently Dirk Gently. Dirk Gently is a private investigator who uses holistic methods about the interconnectedness of all things to try and solve his cases. He is more of a con man than an actual detective. He does not make an appearance in as much until chapter 14. Reg being the primary point of view of the story, with the other ones taking somewhat sidelines. Reg is going to give some opening. Reg is going to a college dinner, like an alumni dinner. Meets his old mentor, Reg. They speak of Dirk Gently. Reg was supposed to take Susan, but forgot to pick her up. And things proceed from there. There's a lot to unpack here. I don't know how I can give it any more away without talk about this any more than giving it away. The story is very convoluted. It really is. I mean, I know that, like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, takes a lot of side paths, but they're all somewhat related, but they're all done as plot exposition. Whereas there is some of that here, but it really, really bounces around, and you don't get any sense of how these things are connected until much later in the story. It starts off with like a landscape full of rain and mud and some sort of object in the distance. That's the opening chapter, which then seems to explode. It then goes on to, it talks about Susan being angry if not being picked up, Richard going to dinner or meeting Reg. The story bound, and it also I mentioned Gordon Way, Richard's boss, yes. And then Gordon in his car on the cell phone. It's like this story bounces around so much in the first 12 to 15 chapters, if not longer, that it was actually kind of hard to get into. Now, this book is in hardcover. It was actually, I got this before it was available in paperback, which I rarely do. So I read this when it first came out in like 1987. And I'm always a huge fan of Douglas Adams' work, and I do really like this book. But it's full of his usual absurdist humor that we've come to know and love from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it is certainly his style of writing, his dry humor, his dry, absurd humor, the way he describes things. And if you're a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you've read that series before, you would probably like this, but it is so very convoluted in the beginning that, I've been thinking about this book pretty much all day to do this review, and it's like I don't know how to talk about it without giving away major plot points. I've talked who the major characters are and kind of how they're related. There are some other characters. There's another acquaintance of both Susan's and Richard's, named Michael, who is somewhat of a spoiled brat. He's an adult, but his father doted on him, gave him lots of money, and now that he's kind of forced to do things on his own and make an account for himself, he's very resentful of that fact. There's an electric monk who is an alien, from an alien species who's designed to believe things for other people. That's his function as an artificial construct. People will tell him things, he will believe it, and that's what he is. That's all he's built for. And all these things are connected holistically. The ending is a bit confusing. And like I said, I've read this book before. I just reread it quickly. I figured I was looking for something quick to read, to try and get this out. So I had maybe some time to read a thicker book. But yeah, this was actually very hard for me to get through because it was so convoluted. I find myself reading a page and like, what the hell did I just read? For what it's worth, let's talk about the without talking about story elements, talking about the novel as a piece of craft. Douglas Adams actually wrote 2 scripts for Doctor Who, the television series, from which he borrowed elements to create this story. So if you know anything about Doctor Who, there's, that might be giving some away. Doctor Who involves Time Lords, people who are Time Lords, who are immortal, who can travel back and forth in time. So he cobbled some elements of the 2 stories that he wrote. I think one of which was never actually broadcast or fully filmed. I think they made some, doing research, one was broadcast and filmed and stuff like that, and the other one was later, I think, released as like snippets of what they had filmed. They kind of like cobbled some stuff together to actually put the story out there. A little side note, because of writing scripts for Doctor Who, Douglas Adams knew the actress who played Romana, who was which of Doctor Who's companions. Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, not a man I'm very fond of, but for other reasons than that. But Richard Dawkins read this book and loved it, and wrote a note to Douglas Adams saying he loved it. He invited Richard Dawkins out. They spoke, and Douglas Adams introduced the actress who played Romana to Richard Dawkins, and they eventually got married. Which is just a little aside, which is kind of weird, which I find interesting. Douglas Adams also based the stuff that takes place in the university in this book. It's a fictional university, but he based a lot of that on his own time at college, at university. So just little tidbits about the creation of the book itself, about the writing and what inspired him and what made him decide to do this. Susan being a cellist, there's some music involved in this novel, and Douglas Adams had said that Bach was one of his favorite classical composers, which he would play the music endlessly and drove his wife nuts. I think that's all I can say about this book. It's weird, it's convoluted, it's written by Douglas Adams, it's silly and absurd. If that interests you, cool. But I'm not, like I said, because it is so convoluted and I found it difficult to get into, difficult for me to recommend. I would personally rate it as like a B+. It's fun. but not for everyone. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.